fundamental role in sports integrity. So there was a very important gap in that sense. In relation to the links with the gambling industry, I don't think that there is any apart from the monitoring tools that we are using by specialist companies just to verify independent investigations. So we have different sources of information just to tap into the market to see what is happening there.
I mean, do you ever get bookies call you up and say, hey, we've got this unusual betting pattern on this game, we think you guys should have a look at this?
Well, we have a number of sources of information, but obviously I cannot divulge that.
In the industry, you know, as a courtesy, especially in the United States, we've got a network, we've got an internal network, bookie to bookie, and when an odd bet comes through, you know, it's only a matter of a minute or two before, you know, the 10 biggest bookies in the United States know about it, and they'll put a circle on the game, they'll limit the max bet amount. And with service companies like Don Best and Odds Portal, you know, it happens live. When we change a line, it immediately gets posted on the internet. So is there a camaraderie between internet bookmakers or Asian bookmakers the way there is in the United States? Really not necessary, because they've got the facilities, the online facilities, real time, you know, in milliseconds, that they can actually monitor line movement like a trader in the stock exchange would monitor an up or down tick. So.
And what about the regulatory environment? I mean, in this global world, and especially online, it doesn't really matter where you are on the planet, in your relationship with your bookmaker. I mean, where are you guys being, you know, what jurisdictions are better in terms of regulations, in terms of any form of gambling, you know, Dave and poker or whatever?
I think it's an oxymoron. I think regulation, when you're dealing with online, is an oxymoron. Nobody can police this, okay? You know, there are no boundaries here. There are there really is no control over who can bet where, because you have what's called a proxy server. So if they shut a website down, in a jurisdiction, all they need to do is log onto a proxy server or a VPN and log back onto the back end of the site. So regulatory, I think it's more for collecting taxes, David. You know, you've got regulatory in you know, North Cagayan, you've got PAGCOR, you've got other regulatory commissions. So
I must respectively disagree. I think in our industry, there's always a line. You can push that line here or there, but to say there's no line, it's a very dangerous proposition or idea. In any given regulatory body that we have in, what do we say, Cagayan, First Cagayan, North Cagayan, or we say Malta or Gibraltar or Isle of Man or Panama even, or Curacao, you know, an operator will choose the regulator based on what they perceive the regulator's line is. So there are definitely lines out there, and I think at the end of the day, I mean, the consumer is also going to make a decision based on that as well, to bet on a site which is regulated, although the idea of regulation may not be as concrete or as outlined as in some other domestic jurisdictions, or like local municipalities are doing lottery or sports betting. But it's enough, or it adds to the credibility to some punters. And I think that's what, you know, on a very practical basis, as we talk about in China, when you have unregulated and regulated sites. I mean, people will go to the best product, but also what means, or what the best product can also mean or include is, you know, where they're regulated. And I would say in poker, that's extremely true, considering what happened in 2011 when sites like Full Tilt and Absolute Poker and Ultimate Bet were exposed, that they didn't keep the player balances. They basically spent as they wanted to spend. And so in the case of poker, where a lot of players keep their online balance to actually play with, there's some difference there. But the spirit or the gist of what you're saying, of course, Of course, I agree to a large extent because that's just the reality of, you know, how powerful or how much teeth do these regulators have. But on the flip side, I mean, where are you going to start? I mean, there's a starting point here.
But do they have teeth? You know, what's recognized in the Philippines is not recognized in Vietnam, which is not recognized in Australia, which certainly is not recognized in the United States.
But my point is, it's like, if you want to compare it to other regulatory bodies, right, because of the nature of the internet, it's hard to do.
Right.
Right? That's what I'm saying. If you did a municipality like the Ontario Lottery Corporation, where they control the actual physical, or even in the UK, but when you start to talk about internet, I mean, it's a different ballgame. But again, I think at the end of the day, what's going to push it forward is the consumer, right? And I think that's the best compromise we could probably lay out on the table.
From the point of view of sports integrity and law enforcement, there is a clear need for a much stronger regulation, especially in terms of controls on money laundering. The staggering figures, I mean, the volumes of money that the industry is moving in relation to the current regulations is astounding. I mean, whereas you have all financial institutions and banking subjected to a very close control, or a much closer control at least than the industry, online industry. Well, the fact that we are seeing these large figures of money laundering, I think speaks by itself. Governments need to step into it. It's not. I do not agree that it will have to be essentially a consumer-led process. I mean, we have to think that the proceedings of money laundering and organized crime is not only used for match fixing, it's used for very serious and violent forms of crime. So the threat that poses, I think that that's something that needs to be taken into account.
Well, I think regulation has a big role to play. And I think it's not just the regulation of the actual gaming side of things. That is important. And I think that customers, certainly in Europe, I don't think you could operate towards Europe without having a proper license from Malta or Gibraltar.